Hi, and welcome to the Collector's Edge from Nordic Art Partners. In today's episode, we will dive into the world of David Shrigley, a British artist known for his humour and instantly recognisable style. With me in the studio is our art expert, Nicholas Robinson, and I'm your host, Jeppe Curth. Let's get started.
It is with Alex Rotter at 400 million. Selling here at Christie's, $400 million is the bid, and the piece is sold.
We've all heard about it. Sometimes it's front page news. Important works of art are being sold for incredible sums of money. But can you get involved and become a part of the exclusive club yourself? And how do you get started while avoiding buying the wrong things? That's exactly what this podcast is about. This is The Collector's Edge from Nordic Art Partners, a podcast for those of you interested in the mechanics of the art industry, want advice about putting money into art, or simply want to buy something for your walls to beautify your surroundings. Whatever your objectives, it is possible to put money into art wisely, to be considered, thoughtful, and well-informed in your choices and actions. Welcome to the art of collecting, with an eye for curated beauty and practical value.
Hi, Nick.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to this episode. Let's start, as always, from the basics. Who is he? Where he's from? How did he emerge as an artist?
Well, maybe before we get into those details, it's a little bit worth pointing out that this is a bit different, maybe, than some of the other episodes we've done. Just for the reason that many of the artists that we discuss are very established, and not that Shrigley's different in that context, but very established sort of iconic figures, having been practicing for many years, many decades in some cases, and we sort of recognize in them some sort of underappreciation of their output by the market, and as such sort of sense an opportunity in terms of acquiring their work for what we think are reasonable prices. But Shrigley's a bit different in that he is an established artist. He is a well-known, iconic artist, but he has a very particular kind of accessibility that's going for him. So one of the things that we like about Shrigley's work is that he is, it produces fantastic, instantly recognizable work, is clearly and acknowledged as a leading artist, and yet getting really great pieces by him is really within the reach of many people. Now we can dive into some of the biographical details, which they're not super relevant, I suppose. There's no incredibly compelling backstory. He's a English guy born in 1968 in Macclesfield, town in Cheshire, near Liverpool, Manchester, in the sort of northish west of England. He took a art and design course at Leicester Polytechnic in 1987. So he's in his mid to late 50s now. And then he studied environmental art at Glasgow School of Art, which is a very famous art school in Britain, designed by Charles Rennie Mackintosh in the end of the 19th century. He studied there at the very end of the 1980s. And, before he became an artist, he worked as a gallery guide at the Centre for Contemporary Arts in Glasgow. And his first forays into making art took place there, where he used their equipment to self-publish these little books of his drawings, which, as we'll come to learn, are the sort of fundaments of his practice.
Okay, thanks. So what I think one of the key thing with David is his signature style and his humor. Could you maybe put some word on that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's really what everyone associates with Shrigley when they think about his work. They think about his very distinctive drawing style, which is, it's casual, or apparently casual, seemingly casual, sort of naive, childlike. So it has a very kind of basic graphic quality, which is sort of anti-precious in the way that it's done. And then the subjects that he makes are, it's a certain kind of social commentary. Sometimes it's satirical, sometimes there's sort of pathos, but most often it's sort of humor and wit, to make satirical comments on everyday situations, to make comments on sort of human nature, human interactions. They're sort of curious and eccentric, and they're often absurdist, and they're rendered most often in bright colors, in this very sort of simplistic style, and then with text to sort of explain the visual humor or situation that he's depicting. Just to give you a few examples, he's made very many over many years, but just to kind of set the scene here, an example might be an image of a goose, which seems to be squawking and flapping, and then a text will say, "Stop panicking, everything will be fine." Another example, hand holding an ice cream, and the text would say, "Life is fantastic." So a lot of these observations are sort of humorous and entertaining, but there's some kind of, recognition in this very deadpan way of the sort of human condition. So sometimes the drawings are of people doing these things. Sometimes the drawings are of monsters or fantastic creatures, and you're given a sort of a sneak peek into their inner thoughts and their fantasy life. And sometimes the sentiments or the whatever subject of the drawing is conveyed by an animal, and you are privy to maybe what this animal might be thinking, and the whole drawing becomes a sort of a thought bubble, if you like. Other examples, there's a famous one with a rabbit. "I am listening, but you don't make any sense." A drawing of an artist's palette. "Art will save the world." So, of course, there's a certain idealism, an innocent idealism in these works sometimes. An image of a bird. "You will not stop me from singing my song. I will sing it forever." And oftentimes it appears that these have been dashed off perhaps a little quickly, so that they're very loose and very playful and very immediate in the way they've been rendered. And sometimes then you will even see mistakes in them, where he's sort of crossed something out, or he's misspelled a word and then he's corrected himself somehow. So there's something that's very, it's like the visual equivalent of a quick-witted thought that's then committed to the page in this playful, childlike, gleeful, joyous fashion.
One of the things that make his works available is, of course, when you just mentioned the price, is like not a price range. One of the things is he must be every gallery's dream, because he produced so much. That's also why the price is maybe a bit lower than many of the other artists we are talking about. But his work spans many forms. He makes drawings, sculptures, animation, even public monuments. How do you think his practice has evolved over time?
Well, I think that as he's become more sort of successful, he's obviously had grander, more ambitious opportunities afforded to him. But I mean, his first drawings from the mid-90s, I think, really, they're mostly monochromatic, and they're a little bit more, I suppose, technically formal, a little more correct, a little more academic in the way that, I mean, they're still playful, and there's still something about them that's sort of intentionally bad drawing, in inverted commas, but they're a little bit more proper than they are today. And I guess as his success has increased, as his confidence as an artist has increased, he's been able to loosen them up and make them sort of progressively worse technically, and still convey what he wants to convey with them. But yes, his practice has encompassed animations. I mean, he made a music video for Blur in the early 2000s. He's published books on poetry. He's done musical collaborations, even with musical luminaries like David Byrne, where he's been responsible for some of the lyrics and music has been set to some of his text. So he's done some large scale installations. He's made some photographs, and then, as you mentioned, he's done some monumental sculpture. I mean, he's been awarded some significant commissions, and the probably the most notable or renowned public monumental sculpture commission that he's been responsible for is the Fourth Plinth. Now, as many people listening will know, the Fourth Plinth is a public sculpture monument that is allocated to a contemporary art project in Trafalgar Square in London. There's a big square just in front of the National Gallery, and there's the famous Nelson's column with a number of bronze lions on plinths around the base of the column. But then on four other corners of the square, there are other public monuments, monuments of significant historic figures. But there's an empty plinth that's been there since the middle of the 19th century, and this was originally intended to have an equestrian statue of the King William IV, but due to a lack of funds, it was never completed. So it's been empty all this time until the early 2000s, I think, when the Mayor of London took over the management of Trafalgar Square from Westminster City Council, and they initiated this public art project. So there have been various sort of interesting, celebrated sculptures that have been placed there that have become variously infamous or entertaining, or they become an iconic thing for the public of London. And Shrigley was awarded the Fourth Plinth Commission in, I forget exactly when it was. Anyway, that's perhaps not so important. But the work, anyway, is an enormous thumbs up. Now, it's a sort of a slightly ridiculous, cartoony thumbs up. The proportions of the thumbs up are very attenuated and a bit comedic, cartoon-like. And the name of this sculpture is called Really Good. So, of course, it's, a little bit of a the title is sort of underwhelming and a little bit anemic given the positivity of the message. But this again speaks to this sort of deadpan delivery that Shrigley has become known for.
Let's talk a little bit about his market. How do you see that have been developed in the past 10 years?
Well, it's definitely accelerated in that period, but I mean, he's been very, successful for a long time. He's really struck on, we talk about the importance of artists, developing their own voice and having a certain kind of signature style, and of course, in that respect, his originality is no different. I mean, he has the traits of other artists whose work has become popular, but there's no doubting a work by David Shrigley with this combination of colourful drawing combined with the text, and then of course the sort of humorous, pithy, deadpan sentiment that's attached to them. I mean, they're unmistakable. So he has a very clear visual language that he's been evolving. But he's had more than 120 solo exhibitions over 30 years since 1995. He's had numerous important solo museum exhibitions, including Copenhagen Contemporary, the Deste Foundation in Greece, which is one of the greatest sort of private collections developed in Europe in the last 30 years, and sort of template for a major private collection that sort of transitioned into becoming a significant museum and public venue. He's had a solo show at the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis, the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, the Pinakothek der Moderne in Munich, Hayward Gallery, London, Kunsthall in Bergen in Norway. So he's had a lot of significant solo exhibitions in museums as well as his long-standing gallery career. And his work is also now in many significant permanent museum collections, including MoMA, Tate, Art Institute of Chicago, Museum Ludwig in Cologne, Centre Pompidou, the Thyssen-Bornemisza, here in Denmark, the Statens Museum for Kunst. I mean, his work is in many, many museums. He's involved with really great galleries around the world. He's showed with Anton Kern for many years, which is a very good, pretty, is a very established gallery, but is also, has a reputation for doing somewhat more edgy things than some of the more conservative heavyweight galleries in New York. He shows with Stephen Friedman, which I suppose is somewhat analogous in its taste in London. His gallery's become a real heavy hitter over the last 20 years. And he shows here in Copenhagen. I think probably Nikolai Wallner, one of the best galleries here in Copenhagen, has worked with him perhaps longer than anyone. And the two of them even have a collaboration which sort of continues to develop and play on this highly popular, accessible ideal that he has. They have a store together called the Shrig Shop, which sells posters and prints and merchandise, really, all of which is aesthetically indistinguishable from his fine art practice and means that you can kind of have a piece of his work for very little expenditure. But the thing about his work also that I think I should sort of mention is that this very intentionally kind of populist, accessible ideal is very much in keeping with his idea that art also should be something for people in general to bring into their lives. For many years, there was a kind of an overarching idea in education, which was called STEM. And STEM is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and maths. And he's been a strong proponent and a real activist to change STEM to STEAM. So instead of just being science, technology, engineering, math, it's now science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And he's been, kind of crusading for educational establishments to change their curriculums to include this. And this is, this idea about a well-rounded education has finally been adopted by Birmingham City University in response to his call. And they have created the very first STEAM teaching qualification so that teachers teaching young people can have much more advanced skills in computer-aided design, 3D printing, also emphasizing design and creative problem solving, to bring that into the teaching for young children so that they are much more exposed to a well-rounded art education as well as these other essential components of an education. So he's very much, out there kind of fighting the good fight as well as just embodying this idea in his work.
Okay, so let's get started on talking a bit about market prices, because he is accessible for many people. And a meter tall work, maybe 75 wide, is around under 15,000 euro on a unique work.
Yep.
Which
that
is
sounds right.
Quite incredible when you also listen to his provenance and his way to the museum, institutions, recognition, all these kind of things. What does that tell you?
Well, it answers the point that you made earlier that he's able to produce a good amount of work. He can be considered prolific. He's able to afford to, and the galleries are able to afford to make them available to people. And I suspect, given his attitude about education and about the accessibility of art for a more sort of mainstream population, I suspect that it's his preference to not make the prices higher than they are, But when you say under 15, I mean, does that mean 14,500, or is it possible to get something? I mean, I think it's possible to get a unique artwork by Shrigley for like $10,000, correct?
That is correct. I mean, the bigger size in euro.
And that's
the big ones. That's 112 by 75.
And these are the works that are basically a sort of a painted in acrylic on this heavy paper.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then you go lower in size, then the price would be lower. I think you could get it down to around 3, 4, 5,000 euro.
And then it's possible also to find or to acquire black and white, sometimes black and white acrylic drawings, but also ink sort of pen drawings, even for less. Correct.
Yeah. Correct. And the funny thing is here, it's when you look at the auction, it's a very liquid market. It's just coming off auction all the time. Also, his edition works. Sometimes the beat, even the unique works.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I mean, I think it's sort of strange. I think it's, he's one of these artists where his sort of print market is a sort of a mini art economy unto itself, like we see with Damien Hirst prints or Warhol prints. I mean, to a lesser extent than those artists, but there's a certain sort of common currency about them where they're cropping up for sale all the time. But to look at his sort of performance sort of history in the art world, his record price at auction is $165,000. Now that's for a large sculptural monument, which of course is a little bit of an outlier in terms of his day-to-day production. But then the next highest price that he achieved is for precisely this type of 1 meter sized acrylic painting on paper. That made $44,000. And this was for what we might term a sort of early-ish one of these works, and very sort of simple and iconic in its subject matter. It's simply a large pink field. So it's very sort of visually appealing, with a sort of an empty circle in the middle, with the words, "It's okay." And that's, very emblematic of the kind of simple nail-on-head type thinking that he's able to portray visually. But then I've also noticed that in his top 20 auction results, 8 of those top 20 auction results are in fact for a print. So this sort of speaks to the point that you make, where there are certain prints which probably are very desirable and quite iconic in his output and have a price accordingly, but then you can acquire unique works by him, for the same or less if you just reach out to any of the galleries or look at any of these auctions that are taking place online at any given point. You can find his work very accessible, but again, to illustrate the way that I was describing his works earlier, this print that sold 8 times in his top 20 results it's an image of an elephant, a seated elephant, and the text says, "I must rest, my rampage is over." So again, it's silly and funny, but also there's a certain poignancy in that as well.
Yeah, because the most of these secondary market prices is below 50,000, yes. All of them almost. So it is very accessible. Also, another thing, when we look into these artists, we also look at markets where his works is still in the UK. He's English. I guess that's a key point. But
I think there's something that's a bit English about his humour, actually.
True,
also.
But the second biggest market is the US, and it's just half as big as the UK market. So it's actually quite big.
Now, is that volume of sales at auction? That's how you're able to determine that?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Turnover on auctions.
Okay.
It's it was $4.5 million in 2023.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of prints.
And 2.5 in the US. So the 4.5 was only in the UK. Okay, and then Japan and Hong Kong is third and fourth. So So above 3,000, 2,000 lots sold just in the UK.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But a wide sort of global appeal, illustrating the kind of simple, attractive, playful nature. I mean, these are really they're really lovely, uplifting things to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for a new collector that's listened to this episode, where should they go looking at Shrigley, his works, maybe where can they buy it?
Well, they can see the work in any of these significant museums that I've mentioned. That's the first place to kind of be able to see the work. But of course, if you're looking to acquire work and you wish to see a selection of works, then you can look online, where you can find many options in the secondary market. But I think prior to that, the first port of call should be the galleries. Nikolai Wallner always has a nice inventory of available works, and I expect that Stephen Friedman and Anton Kern do so similarly. There's not really a shortage of them, which means that of course it's able to keep the prices reasonable, as we've mentioned. But because they're so reasonably priced, and because he's such a well-known and increasingly iconic figure, it's very difficult to imagine them ever being worth less. Now, this is not, we're not sort of suggesting, acquire David Shrigley works and, you'll be able to, make a lot of money by turning them over in the near future for a substantial profit. This is not the kind of situation that we're talking about. We're talking about accessing, collecting, acquiring really, really good artwork by a globally renowned leading artist for an incredibly affordable price. The price being sufficiently affordable that it's largely inconceivable that you'll ever sort of lose money. So it's a very stable, it's a very solid and very liquid thing to put money into, to enjoy, and to be able to have, a really top thing for a good price.
Yeah. But if a new collector comes and see his many motifs, is there something specific they should go for in terms of a good or maybe a bad Shrigley work?
Well, I think that the sort of the simplicity of the message is perhaps important. Sometimes there's a real kind of almost sort of profundity with the message. There's a really great image where he's made this sort of, it looks like a sort of pastiche of an abstract painting. The surface is covered in brush strokes. It's largely grey, and there's a little space. And in the little space, there's a text that says "a gap in the clouds." Now, of course, this is a really nice metaphor for lots of things. So something like that has that very sort of distilled message, which of course is also a positive message. That kind of thing is very nice to have. And then I would say, the ones with the animals, they're proven time and time again to be the most popular ones, where you have this sort of cutesy little colourful animal character and then a fun message, a life message, if you like, that sort of comes from the animal communicated to you. I would say things like that are the best ones to go for. Some of them are a bit more surreal. Some of them are a bit more obscure. Some of them are very, I don't know, sort of a bit British and a little bit esoteric in their reference. So perhaps, these are appealing if that message really appeals to you. But in a more general sense, I would say the sort of simplicity and universality of, or if that's even a word, the universal nature of the message probably would be the ideal type of thing to go for.
Well, I have to confess, I love his humor, and I have also works at him at home. But do you think that's more lifestyle oriented? Sometimes we have artists that is very also like an asset, but is he becoming an asset, or is it more a life oriented taste?
Well, of course. As with anything, people buy things that they like, and when artwork is affordable, it's very easy to say, yes, I'll have one of those because I like it. Do I think that his work is an asset? In a way I do, just because I think that it's something that holds its value. They've cost more or less the same price for a long time. They sell for more or less the same price at auction. I don't think that it's something that is some particularly, striking investment type play, but I do think that it's very stable, very liquid, very safe repository of, a modest chunk of money.
Okay, so before we end, is there anything we are missing?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's really, it's work that is really intentionally sort of simple in many ways, or it's deceptively simple. His messaging is entertaining, but it's also, a little bit sort of sophisticated in the way he combines these elements to create such a powerful sort of visual rhetoric. So I think that's the first thing. He's got very good galleries all around the world. So we know that he's got, a long exhibition history, a good, solid, stable future to look forward to, where he could continue to develop his aesthetic, his market. And we can see that he's, over many years, has significant career milestones, which makes us understand that there's a strong consensus about his work in 2013, 13 years ago. He had a major mid-career retrospective at the Hayward Gallery called Brain Activity. He was a Turner Prize nominee in 2013. In 2016, he had the Fourth Plinth commission for Trafalgar Square with the big thumbs up. This then travelled in 2023 to Melbourne, where it was included in the National Gallery of Victoria Triennial. And in 2015, the British Council organised a big travelling exhibition of his work, which went to 6 different venues globally, including museums in Shanghai, Seoul, Mexico. And then as recently as 2020, he was awarded the Officer of the Order of the British Empire, so an important distinction in the UK, otherwise known as an OBE. So, obviously there's a strong consensus about the fact that David Shrigley is an important artist who's made a significant contribution for a long time. And there are no other artists with these credentials where one can buy a work for the kind of reasonable price that we're talking about.
Okay, so let me give you the last question. Is Shrigley underrated or perfectly priced for where he is in his career?
I think underrated. I mean, I don't know of another artist, even these relatively sort of simple works on paper. I mean, as you said, you can get a colourful, beautiful painting on paper for almost a metre in size for like less than 15,000 euros. I mean, find me an artist where that is possible.
Well, I'll try to do that, but thank you for this time, Nick.
Thanks.
That was it for this episode of The Collector's Edge. If you are looking for expert insights, want to make informed decisions, and would like advice from independent advisors, send us an email or maybe just call us. You can find all the info on our website, nordicartpartners.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to have you back for another episode. Bye. I think that was really refreshing to